Welcome to Rainbows Are Circles, a podcast exploring human potential and everyday wonder. What possibilities open up for us when we explore life with optimism, curiosity, and an open mind? Join me, Julie Malari, as we wake up to wonder and speak with inspirational guests on the topics of personal development, alternative health, and even magical, mystical, yet often misunderstood practices. Are you ready? Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Rainbows Are Circles. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Can you believe it's already 2022? I feel like time has just been going by so quickly. I hope this year is off to a good start for you. Last year, I interviewed a man named David Strickle, who is a channel for Source Consciousness, and he shares this channeled wisdom in his podcast called The Stream of David. He's also written books, and he has a 12-week boot camp program called TYA, T-Y-A, which means Trust Your Abundance. After I interviewed David last year, I was so drawn to his teachings that I signed up for this TYA bootcamp program. And just to give you a little bit of information, because we're going to refer to this practice in our episode today. So I want just to make things a little bit more clear. TYA is a spiritual mindset practice, TYA, Trust Your Abundance, that helps people to see the world from the loving, non-judgmental perspective of Source or God or the universe or whatever you want to call it. And the intention of this practice is to help people live with more joy, clarity, and abundance. The 4 pillars of the TYA practice are radical appreciation, setting intention, understanding polarity, and connecting with Source energy. Our beautiful guest today is Deborah Wilson. She was also a student in the bootcamp program with me. She was actually wrapping up as I was just beginning. And I very quickly fell in love with this woman. You probably will today too. And I'm really excited to have her on the show because during the bootcamp program, she would often refer to the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage route in Europe. It takes a month or longer to walk this pilgrimage route. And she has walked this route many, many times and has an incredible story of transformation and growth that she will be sharing with us today. And she's also going to be talking about how the TYA practice and the Camino de Santiago are very similar in a lot of ways and how they both are really powerful tools and experiences for transformation and getting people out of sort of stuck, stagnant, fearful places in their lives. So if you are at all feeling like you might be in a space like that, like maybe you're in a job or a relationship or a home, or you're having some sort of experience in your life where you feel stuck and you know you want to make a change, but you're also really scared to do so, then I think this is going to be a really great and inspiring episode for you. So I hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome everybody to Rainbows Are Circles. So happy to be here today and to be with our beautiful guest, Deborah Wilson. She's been walking the Camino for how many times have you done it? Over 15 times, Deborah?
Oh, goodness. I've walked it with groups for 10 years and I would do it 4 times a year. So,
oh my God.
And then I've walked my own Caminos, about 7 or 8 of them. So it's been a while, yes.
It's been a while. I felt really excited to talk to Deborah about the Camino because she's always talking about it. And she is a self-proclaimed Camino pusher. She's convinced me to want to walk it. I'll let her talk to us about what the Camino is, why people do it, and share her story of transformation. So, Deborah, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you. And yeah, how are you doing today, just to start off?
It's my absolute pleasure. I was just speaking with another person from the Tower practice saying how much we miss you, Julie,
Aw.
because you, as you were very kindly saying about me, we absolutely love your beautiful light and presence, and it's not the same without you there. So we need you back. We need you to, yes. So there we have you coming back into the expanded group within Tyre and walking the Camino. So I've full score on both counts.
You're
Both
very
things that I love.
You're a convincing lady. You could be a
Yes.
salesperson.
I don't think so. But when it's my two passions, it's easy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Deborah, let's start off by let's just start off with a little bit of your story. Why did you feel drawn to walk the Camino in the first place? Like, what was in your life that drew you to that path?
Sure. So just to give a little bit of background, it's a series of pilgrimage routes in Europe, and the most well-known one of them is the French way, the Camino Français, which was made very famous in the movie The Way. It's well worth a watch. And basically, all of these routes lead to Santiago de Compostela in northwest Spain, in Galicia, which is where the remains of St. James or Santiago are reported to be buried. And it's 800 kilometers or 500 miles. People stay in communal hostels called albergues. There can be up to a couple of hundred people. I don't want to put you off with this, in an albergue, or there might be just a couple of you. And it is a very communal experience, but you don't have to stay in the communal hostels. There is every level of accommodation along the way, but it is a really nice place to start. I always encourage people now to walk it by themselves if they feel that that's not too much of a challenge for them. And then you meet so many people. So I think that gives a bit of an overview as to what the Camino is about. It's not just religious. It's been walked by millions of people for at least 1,000 years and was also a pagan route. It follows the path of the Milky Way, and it's walked with a great deal of spiritual intent by a lot of people. But some people literally just walk it as they start off walking as just a hike across northern Spain.
A long hike.
Usually a long hike. It generally turns out to be a lot more than they had expected.
It seems like people are kind of drawn to walk it. It's not just like, I mean, some people hike it for fun and then they find more along the way, but it's something that people feel sort of drawn and connected to. So what drew you to walk the Camino the first time?
Well, that's a really excellent point, because I do very firmly believe that the Camino calls you to it. So if anybody's listening to this, then that can be your calling to the Camino. And I originally got involved with it. I heard about it when I was 18, and it was just one of those things that you hear about and you go, okay, of course, I know I'm going to walk that. I knew it was going to be really important in my life. There are just some key points, little breadcrumbs that you find along the way, and you just resonate with them immediately. And of course, I'm going to do that. It did take me a long time to actually get round to answering that calling. At first, I was working actually as a hiking guide for 10 years, I believe. But it wasn't really my Camino then, because I was looking after other people and it was a beautiful experience, but it wasn't actually the Camino, which you need to do, I think, preferably by yourself or with the close friend, but you need to walk it for yourself. And that didn't transpire for me until 2017. And there's a whole story there. I was definitely called at that very specific time, very specific, because there was literally only one date which was going to be viable for a number of reasons. It would appear that they were logistical. It was actually very specifically that I was meant to leave on that day to meet up with the people that I then ended up walking with, and we all met on the first day. So I know I was definitely called on that day, and there were a lot of serendipitous things that happened before I left and coincidences which made it very clear to me in retrospect that it was that day, that time. That was when I was called to walk first proper Camino, which was the northern route, which follows along the coastline of Spain. And I was setting off with my husband of 19 years.
What happened for you on that trip? How did you change or grow from that experience?
They do say that the Camino gives you what you need, not what you think that you want. And that was very much the case for me on that trip. I had thought that I was walking it with my husband to celebrate a new start together. Things had been a little bit rocky, and we were walking it together with great intentions to reaffirm our vows to each other and to become closer. And it was very much what I'd expected to happen. And at the beginning of the trip, we met a hospitalera, they're called the people that look after the albergues, who said that although our Camino family, which had formed a group of people that we were walking with, all seemed very happy, she said it's never the same group of people that ends up walking into the cathedral square at the end. And little did I know that one of the people that wouldn't be walking with me was in fact my husband. So what happened was it caused a huge transformation, because he literally walked off and didn't return. And yes, which was not really what I was expecting. And that led to a massive amount of self-realizations for me, a lot of which tie in very directly with our Taya practice, and the basis of that being trust your abundance. And the Camino very much taught me to trust my abundance and to trust myself, to get to know myself properly, to stop running away from myself, to stop hiding behind someone else, to not live through the lens of fear, which was why we were staying together. We both knew that the relationship had run its course, but neither of us really had the guts to walk away from it. Obviously, there was still a great deal of love there, but it wasn't the best course of action for us to stay together. We weren't allowing each other we weren't growing together. It was quite a dysfunctional relationship. So he did me the most enormous favor, as with many times this will be the case, that what appears to be the worst thing ever to have happened turns out to be the best. Mm-hmm. And so I initially was going to leave and go back home. But the people who I'd been walking with for a couple of weeks by this point, who were very specifically meant to be walking with me, said that they really wanted me to stay and walk with them, and that I could be however I wanted to be. I could cry. I didn't have to be with them all the time. I could be however I needed, and they would give me their unconditional love and support, which was quite amazing. I had, until that point, always been very much a people pleaser and very lacking in that self-worth, which we all need to find within ourselves. And that's what the Camino taught to me, starting with that lovely group of friends who showed me that I was worth being with in and of myself. I always felt the need to entertain, to placate, to look after others, to put my needs at the bottom of the list. And very much it taught me to stop being a people pleaser. It's taught me to walk myself home, come back to myself, and a sense of self-worth, a sense of self-love, and it started a whole process that then led me to the Thai practice, which for me is one and the same.
The thing that sometimes feels the most terrible and painful ends up sometimes being one of the best things that could happen for us, and one of the best things that can spur our growth and our transformation,
Yes.
which it sounds like it did for you.
Very much so. And I think that's what I'd like to inspire in your listeners, that if they feel that they're stuck, because that was how I would describe how I felt before. When you feel stuck in a relationship or in a job or in any situation in your life, and you're staying through fear, and procrastination is a big symptom of that. I was a chronic procrastinator too. And to get to the other side of fear and actually see the gifts that are waiting for you on the other side of that, it couldn't be more transformational. And I think where the Camino and the Taya, the Trust Your Abundance practice that we both are practitioners of, are very, very similar. In fact, one and the same, in my opinion, in so much as one of the main precepts of the Taya practice is that of not just forgiveness, but of radical appreciation. And when you're walking the Camino, very naturally what will happen is that your hours and hours of walking by yourself, you will naturally turn inwards. You can't do anything but, even if it's kicking and screaming, you will turn within yourself. There's nowhere else to go. And so this was quite extraordinary for me, because if this was going to happen, if you're going to split up with your husband of 19 years, there literally could be no better place for it, because then I could daily go through those stages of the grief at the beginning and just wail my way through the first 10 days or so. I was a wailing, weeping woman on the Camino. And yes. And so it would all just naturally just come pouring out of me. And where else would you have the time and space for that to happen? And as it poured out, it opened up the space for the love to come in. And you start to not only forgive people that you perceive of having hurt you, but also start that process of radical appreciation, which then the Taya practice only confirmed, that when you actually reach a place of appreciation, for example, my husband of 19 years walking off and abandoning me, that would have been my victim story. Oh, woe is me, I had been abandoned by, and in fact, it was the biggest gift he could ever have given me. And then finding a place of absolute appreciation for him and for all our perceived transgressors, who are in fact our teachers, that freeing you from living life through the lens of a victim. The Camino itself gives that natural start to that process. And it's also a place of non-judgment, which of course is another of the precepts of the Taya practice. If you take the judgment and fear out of any situation, then you're left with the truth. And on the Camino, everybody is equal. You're no lawyer or accountant or teacher. You're just a pilgrim walking the Camino. You're all wearing the same hiking gear. Yes, not the most flattering.
Dirty clothes.
Dirty, exactly. You're a bit smelly. You're a bit stinky. You're a bit sweaty, and there's no judgment. Everyone is just taken. And afterwards, you might find out that you were walking with. There was one woman who was an opera singer. You would never have known. And it's just that place of non-judgment, which I felt, and I'm sure you did too, from the very beginning in the Thai practice, joining with that in that sense of community in which everybody is upholding each other. And it is my very favorite Rumi quote, and it applies, I think, both to the Thai practice and the Camino, of we're all just walking each other home, which just gives me goosebumps every time I hear that, because it's so true, both on the Camino and in the Thai practice. And I think that's why that is our purpose here, to be walking each other home back to ourselves, to our source connection. The intentions which have become such a way of life for me with the practice of setting intentions, both in the morning and every stage of the day. I think the great intentions with which people have walked the Camino, the millions and millions that have actually imbued that very soil with some people, this is a little bit contentious because some people say that ley lines exist naturally, and some people feel that it is the actual spiritual intent that has caused these ley lines to exist along the Camino. But the energy that you feel and the energy that is very real on the Camino is a lot to do with the intent with which people have walked it, that great spiritual intent. When you get to Santiago and you're at the end of your Camino, it's like going through your 12 weeks of the practice. We usually take a little longer, of the boot camp, as it's known. You realize that you're just at the beginning. So you have, you have your tools, but you're literally just starting out. You've cleaned out the fear and the judgment. I don't think we ever completely get rid of this. Part of the human condition is to have some residual fears or anxiety. That's the human condition. We're never going to completely rid ourselves of those. But through the process of both walking the Camino, of actually confronting your fears, walking through them, come to that place of appreciation, and with the Thai practice, obviously the same. You're living life from a completely different perspective. We're not learning anything new. We're just coming back to ourselves, both on the Camino and in Thai.
We think that we have to keep building ourselves up and keep making ourselves better. But oftentimes it's kind of like we just need to let go of the things that were making us feel like we weren't enough, the conditioning and the beliefs and the way that the sun shines. Like, it's always shining, but on a day when the sun isn't shining, it's not that the sun's not actually shining. It's just that there might be weather, there might be clouds covering up the sun, that's keeping the light from being really bright. But there's nothing wrong with the sun. It's just sometimes we just need to clear away all of the things that are blocking us from really being ourselves and really shining and really being our best and our brightest. And that's what's so great about, it sounds like, the Camino, and also the Thai practice, which you mentioned, Trust Your Abundance. This is the boot camp that we met in, led by David Strickle. For those of you unfamiliar, one of the main pillars of the Thai practice is radical appreciation for the things that we feel have harmed us. Maybe we feel victimized by the things that have created wounds and limiting beliefs that keep us from really being who we came here to be. And once we can actually appreciate those people and those experiences for the ways that they helped us to learn and grow in this human life, then we're no longer a victim of those things, but rather we take those lessons to build us up even more, to help us become even stronger. Just like you said, with the breakup of your relationship, like, you could have felt like an abandoned victim. You could have been angry for the rest of your life, and you could have held resentment for him. But instead, you looked at yourself, you looked at maybe the ways in which you both co-created the relationship and the things that you were meant to learn from it. And you're no longer a victim to that experience.
Yeah, that was beautifully explained there. I love that. And the way the sun is always there, it's just maybe the clouds that are in the way. And yes, thank you so much for clarifying that, because I think it can, because we're both so familiar with this practice now that it's just second nature to us, but it can sound a little bit like victim blaming to some people when we talk about the process of radical appreciation. But I could see both when I walked the Camino and then when I started the bootcamp process, I could already see as I was walking and as these layers were being stripped away from me, the dysfunctional relationship that we were in we had just both been repeating those classic patterns that we all do throughout our life when we stay mired in that victim mindset. I could see very clearly as I walked how that role of the martyr and the breadwinner and the working all the hours of the day and being so supportive, it was so very obvious to me how I had colluded with that. And it's not to blame either him or myself. It's not a question of blame. It's just a question of seeing through a clear lens and seeing that you were, in fact, or I was, in fact, living that through that lens of a very frightened child and one that needed the approval of others to feel a sense of self-worth, which obviously we only find the true sense of self-worth once we no longer feel that need to have the approval of anyone else. And we can come back home to ourselves, which is the only place that we'll ever find that true sense of self-worth and self-love. And it's in fact the biggest gift then that we can give to everyone else around us. Because what might seem like a fairly selfish concept of self-love is in fact the most generous thing we can do, because then we're not demanding anything of anyone else. Nobody else can give that to us. We have that well of love within ourselves. We're all capable of accessing that and tapping into it and then beaming that light out to everyone else, which is now my highest purpose, is to be that. I often use the analogy of a lighthouse, to shine that light, to reflect that light back that we all are, because of course we are all one and we all have that light within us. And I have this lovely little image of little lighthouses on legs running around, beaming our lights out at each other and reflecting back that source of love and the lighthouse beam to each other. And thus raising not just our vibration, but raising the collective vibration, which is why we're here, I feel, to expand and to shine our light on each other. I think I got a long way from your original question, but yes, the process of radical appreciation, of not just forgiving, but understanding there really is ultimately nothing to forgive, and entering the state of deep appreciation for absolutely everything that happens to it. It is so incredibly liberating. If it sounds for some of your listeners like that might be a stretch, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling that you know that there's a way out, but you just keep feeling stuck, I really would urge you, to do both actually. That's my highest aim now, is to get, I have this vision of people actually even maybe doing Taya bootcamp whilst on the Camino. Wouldn't that be amazing?
With the vibrational spiral, which we talk about in the Taya practice. So if we imagine ourselves, our energy levels on this spiral, we can, when we're feeling happy, when we're feeling joyful, when we're feeling connected to source or to the universe or to God or whatever you want to call it, that's when we are in our highest vibration, when we're up our spiral, as we say. And then there are going to be times when we just naturally go down and we feel sad, or we feel doubtful, or we feel even despair. And that's when we say we're down the spiral. And the world is full of polarity. So we're always naturally going to be going up and down our spirals. But with the Taya practice, what we learn is that it's okay to go down the spiral. In fact, it's a natural process. And when we're down there, it's when we encounter the things, maybe challenges and obstacles that are there for a reason. They're there so that we can observe them and so that we can work through them and so that we can learn from them and grow from them in the solving of those obstacles, which then naturally brings us back up our spiral. And when we come up, we then, because we've solved and gone through some of the things that we encountered when we're down our spiral, we are now a little bit stronger and a little bit less weighed down by what we call transgressors in the Taya practice. And a transgressor is really just anything that you have not brought yourself to forgive, whether it's a person or a traumatizing experience or just something mean that somebody said to you when you were little that really shaped your beliefs and your self-worth as an adult. When we no longer have all of those things weighing us down, all those things that created the limiting beliefs that keep us from our abundance, then we just naturally are higher vibration. We're naturally more open and free and abundant and connected to source. Again, it's the clearing away of the things that block our light, that block us from shining and from knowing our worth. Like we don't actually have to find, I guess we don't have to necessarily grow our self-worth. We just have to reconnect with it and claim it and accept it. But so many of us got disconnected from that growing up because of experiences that we had, or because of the ways that we were shaped by society, when we were taught to, put everybody else's needs in front of our own, when we were taught that it wasn't okay to cry and to feel our feelings, when we were taught that we weren't good enough at this or that, when we were taught anything that made us feel like we were less than what we actually are. And so it's hard when you're little to process all of that. But now, like, especially as adults, through a practice like Taya or through an experience like the Camino, we can look at those things from sort of an observational, or almost a detached way, and just look at our lives and look at our beliefs and look at our experiences and make connections as to, like, okay, I am the way I am because of this experience. And I created this belief about myself because of this experience. But is that really true? And if it's not, how can I heal that experience? How can I forgive that experience so that it's no longer weighing me down and making me believe something that isn't true about myself? That's what I love about the Taya practice, and what you seem to love about the Taya practice and the Camino. It's just a clearing away of things. It's such an empowering practice because we no longer have to be limited or controlled by judgment and fear and limiting beliefs. And once you clear that away, that's when you can really create abundance and the life that you desire.
That was masterfully explained. That was really beautiful.
I actually want to just read one of your posts on the Taya practice Facebook page, because every now and then you post things on there about experiences that you're going through, and they're always so beautiful and inspirational and wonderfully written. So I'm gonna read a little post that you put up on October 14th, if that's okay.
Ooh, lovely.
Okay. So I'm going to start a few lines in. You came here for both the up and the downhill runs. It's all part of the polarity here, all part of the game, the hot and the cold. When there's an up, there's a down, which is also reflected in our connection and disconnection from source as we move through the inevitable vibrational flow. And there would be no point in our being here otherwise. This is precisely how we expand, The whole flavor of life is in the contrast that we think that we don't want, of solving the obstacles we place in our way. We think we want permanent ease and joy, but of course we don't really. We wouldn't even be able to recognize it if we didn't have something with which to contrast it, which means that we can fully embrace and appreciate every obstacle, knowing that it's there to propel us ever higher. When we grasp that understanding, even momentarily, we feel how extraordinarily powerful we are and how beautiful the design is. Oh, that I like to call those my daily dose of Deb.
You read it so beautifully. You read that so beautifully. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Oh, well, you wrote it so beautifully, and I enjoyed reading it. So, I want to just touch on how you said we can't even understand. We can't understand what something is unless we have something with which to compare it. Mm-hmm. We can't understand what light is unless there's darkness. Like if our world was just bright all the time, if there was no nighttime, we literally couldn't understand what darkness is or what nighttime is, because there would be nothing with which to compare it. And so when we're going through something really crappy that feels like really bad, this practice helps us to appreciate that for the contrast that it provides. I know and feel happiness because I understand and have felt sadness. So the Thai practice really just helps us to appreciate the fullness and richness of what living is, really.
Yes. Yeah. Once again, beautifully
and
put.
It sounds like the Camino is like a walking, living, physical expression and opportunity to live the Thai practice.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it would appear on the surface just to be a little stroll across northern Spain, but it's so much more than that. And it has been transformational for many thousands of people. I think often they will, as I say, just expecting to be popping off on a little stroll across the country, and their lives are forever changed from it. I think you have to be open to it, but it also has a way of cracking you open. And there's that other beautiful Rumi quote, isn't there, which I'm going to absolutely murder now because I don't think I remember it exactly, but about the crack being the place that allows the light to come in, which also obviously chimes very much with what you were just saying. Once we allow that light to start to come in and shine the light on us back to ourselves, we can't ask for a greater gift than that.
Well, I'm just going to say that I am committing in this very moment on this podcast to walking the Camino in 2022.
That's made me exceedingly happy. Oh my goodness.
Oh, and we should do a follow-up conversation afterwards, and I can share the experience.
Oh, I'm covered in goosebumps. Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Yay. That's made me so happy. Take as little as possible and good pair of walking shoes and start walking and following the yellow arrows. And that's all you need to do. And that I'm covered in goosebumps at that. Absolutely love that you're going to be doing it. How exciting.
And just another bit of info. Usually, so there are different routes that you can take, but the typical one that people take takes about 30 days. Correct?
A little longer. Usually I would say sort of 5 to 6 weeks rather, that to give you the amount of time that you might need to take rest days. And, yeah.
Okay. Well, I better start preparing. um, Deborah, before we wrap up, I want to go through our lightning round questions.
Cool.
Okay.
Do I win something?
Oh, I should have prizes. That's
It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
All right.
Right.
Okay. So in 2020, people experienced a lot of challenges, but also a lot of wonderful things came out of it as well. What is something wonderful that happened for you in 2020?
Well, that's easy, isn't it? First thing would be losing my job, which was again because I worked in tourism. That it seemed like the worst possible thing, and turned out to be the best possible thing ever, which then gave me the time and the opportunity to lead me to the Thai practice and writing my book.
Beautiful. When you're having a rough day, what brings you back to center?
Easy peasy as well. That one, appreciation. Such a life-changing tool in and of itself. Just finding those three things to appreciate, and it's appreciation.
Do you believe in magic? And if so, what is magic to you?
That's just reminded me, I did a post, I think it was called Magic is Real or Real Magic or something like that. It's, for me, I had the Liv Newton-John song in my head. You're way, 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 way too young to remember that. Leg warmer days. Got to believe this is magic. And magic is way more real to me than what we would commonly perceive as reality. Yep.
If you could be any animal, what would you be and why?
Dolphin, for sure. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely adore them. And as you know, I spent a lot of time underwater too, and was fortunate enough to come across quite a few of them.
Deborah, this has been so wonderful. Are there any final things that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Just that if I think I've said it several times now, I'm feeling very sort of inclined to say that it just feels that there's somebody that's listening. If you're feeling stuck, there is a way out of that. It's such a painful place to be. And you don't have to take huge radical action today. You don't have to sort of just, right, I'm going to walk the Camino and sign up for it, but just maybe be curious about how you could start to become that. Maybe check out the Thai Practice Facebook page. Check out there's a wonderful podcast about the Camino called My Camino, the podcast. Maybe start listening to inspirational stories there, because that would be my highest joy, to think that I could in some way start someone that process of getting out of that feeling stuck.
Yes. And I also want to say, listeners, if you feel drawn to or connected to anything that we spoke about today, really start to follow those threads of your curiosity, because those are the things that really make us feel alive. And when we're following those little intuitive hints, they just kind of lead us down these sort of magical pathways. And that's what led me to the Thai practice, which led me to Deborah, which led to this conversation right here, right now, which is going to lead me to the Camino de Santiago and all of the experiences and people that I'm going to meet along the way, which are going to lead me to a million other magical things in my life. And all of that started because, I had the podcast. Someone on David's team reached out to ask if I wanted him to be on the podcast. And I checked out David's his own podcast and his own website. And I was like, this sounds really interesting. And it was just that little spark of interest that I felt drawn enough to, that led me to reach out to him and say, yeah, let's do this podcast. And then, everything just kind of happened from there. So I just think that's a way that we can really start to live more enjoyable, magical lives that we actually like living, when we're just doing things that truly interest us and that we feel truly drawn to. So that's, I think we'll end there. Deborah, how how can people learn about you or your book if they want to connect with you or just learn more?
Well, as it stands, I have just the Instagram account, which is love, you say period rather than full stop, don't you? Love, full stop, or whatever, on the Camino. I'm also hanging out on the as a guide on the Tire Facebook page, so you can always find me there and drop me a message.
So love dot on the Camino, or
yes, thank you.
As British people say, love full stop on the Camino on Instagram. You can find Deborah. You can also read her Daily Dose of Deb post on the Taya Facebook page and connect with her on Facebook. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Deborah. This has been a true delight to have you on the show. And listeners, if you want to learn more about Deborah, I'll also put her information on the show notes page on rainbowsarecircles.com. And if you want to get sort of extra bonus content, you can check out patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much for being here, Deborah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was such a joy.
Bam, 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 bam. Wow, 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 wow. Rainbows are circles.